Oh, hey there, folks. This is your host, Kate Gaffney, letting you know this is part 2 of 2 with the utterly delightful writer, stand-up comic, and leader in the growing movement to decriminalize sex work, Kaytlin Bailey. Kaytlin's one-person show is about to start touring the country. It's going to start in New York City, specifically in Manhattan, and then she's going to go from there to various cities. She's definitely coming to San Francisco and anywhere in between. She also still tours the country talking about the decriminalization of sex work and being very candid about that industry. And if you want to get in touch with Kaytlin directly, you can visit her website, which is KaytlinBailey.com, KaytlinBailey.com. There you can see the media, the articles that she's written for Vice and elsewhere about working in sex work, and just get to know her. She is utterly delightful, as you will see, and so whip smart. Give me more smart women, y'all. Y'all have smart women in your lives that do interesting work. Please reach out. I never tire of speaking to smart women. I never tire of speaking to smart people, but I just delight in smart women. So please reach out to us. Please support her work. Please support art. You see what we have to go through, y'all, to be able to be artists in very expensive cities. You're going to hear about it. So this is part 2 of 2. Find Kaytlin on all the things. At the end of this episode, we give all of her socials, and it will also be in the show notes. Thank you folks so much for listening. Let's get on with the show. Okay, so this is the section where we ask all the questions, but I'll jump back in. Do you have any questions before we start that?
No, this has been fun. This is great. Thanks for doing it.
I'm so glad. Thanks for doing it.
Fun.
Okay, I'm trying to speed up because I know you only have 45 more minutes, so here we go. Okay, folks, we're back, and now it's time for the entrees. Okay, Kaytlin, now this is the part that everybody knows and loves. This is the part where we gripe about jobs. Of course, I'm going to ask you about, all of the jobs, but you've already mentioned 2. So you did say, you answered our very first question already. What was your first job ever? And I wrote it down. You were a canvas director, right? No, that's not right.
That was my first job upon graduating college.
Ah, okay. Well, what's your first job ever?
That was my first salaried position where they sort of pretended to give me health insurance and stuff. It was fun. My first job, I was 15 and I was working as a hostess at Applebee's.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to ask questions about that in a second. How many customer service jobs would you say you've had total then, if we start with Applebee's?
Oh, God. Okay. So Applebee's, Amarillo Grill, 4 pizza places in Charleston. I don't know why I got so into pizza.
Big pizza advocate.
I don't know what that was about. Yeah. Another hostess gig. I think the canvassing counts as customer service.
Yes.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Yes.
Canvassing, Starbucks. We're up to 10.
Mm-hmm.
And then, that's right. I worked at Le Pont Quotidien at Rockefeller Center as a job. That was terrible.
Oh.
I still have anxiety nightmares about table 4 needs water.
Oh, God. I have so many questions. Okay, keep going.
Yeah. And then after the Rockefeller Center, I worked as a tutor. And I also worked, one of the weirdest, funnest jobs that I ever had was I worked as chaperone. So when high school kids from all over the country, like Oklahoma and Alaska, like rural America, come to New York, they pay people like me to sit in the hallway from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. to prevent pregnancy or property damage or things that can happen when kids come to the big city and are left in a hotel room.
And you loved that job.
I love that because I got to watch Game of Thrones in the hallway forever. That was just, the kids would go to bed. And so I'd be like, hi, I'm Kaytlin. You're not allowed to leave. And I'll be sitting in this corner to make sure that's true. And then I would just sit there and be on the computer all night and I was living a mostly nocturnal lifestyle anyway.
I was going to ask.
And then I'd walk home at 6 o'clock in the morning and walking through, it's a magical hour to be walking through the streets of New York.
Yeah, it is my favorite time is that early morning. Yeah. Okay, so you were a chaperone. Okay, so tutor chaperone was the most fun. What else? Customer service then? Sex work, I assume. Do you count that as customer service? I very much do.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Also, that is definitely customer service. Okay. Yes. So sex work, the first time I did sex work, I was in high school. That was after I worked at Applebee's and while I was working at the Amarillo Grill as a line cook, which both, I was sexually harassed, by the way, at both of those jobs. And then I got paid to do consensual sex work, which was a way better dynamic than just being pinched and made uncomfortable by my manager who was paying me $7 an hour or something.
Disgusting.
Disgusting. So just throwing that out there,
yep,
right?
Disgusting.
It's not like my service industry jobs didn't have the sex part of it. I just had it was not consensual tools for self-advocacy.
Yeah. And also you were not you didn't sign up for it. You signed up to do a job that wasn't
exactly. It
including
was
that.
not consensual. I was like, I'm here to cook chicken, or I'm here to seat people. Those were the jobs.
Wow.
Not provide sexual entertainment for middle-aged, underemployed dudes.
That are probably not showering regularly. What was were you, I would be so terrified, if I'm honest, of stepping into that and feeling so vulnerable. So because you were in high school, what was what made you feel safe?
Yeah. So it was really important to me for lots of reasons to not be killed and murdered.
Oh, really? You're the only,
mostly.
Weird.
Yeah, so there's the obvious stuff, right? Like being alive is better.
It's good.
But also, I was a middle-class kid who was doing sex work to prove a point, right? I had no survival needs that I had to meet. So if I ended up dead, then I'd be wrong.
Yeah.
Which felt worse to me than the violence. You know? Like, I was like, maybe prostitution is fine. That's my hypothesis going into this. So I was really extra about screening, which was also made possible by my privilege, right? Because I didn't have rent, because I didn't have like urgent needs that could only be met with money, it was very easy for me to say, no, I'm sorry, man, like I need more information before I can meet with you. Or like, I don't know, that email made me feel weird, I'm just not gonna respond. Or like, I was looking for reasons not to see clients because this was recreational for me, which I think is really important.
Yeah.
To say that, like that if you want to increase people's options, then one of the first things that you should do is increase their access to resources. And it makes it easier for folks to step away from clients they don't feel comfortable with or setting boundaries because they have their needs met, which was certainly my case. So, in order to book an appointment with me, you had to send me a nice email. I needed your real name. I needed to know where you worked. And I needed the name and contact information for 2 other providers that you had seen and presumably not killed or upset in some way.
Presumably.
So then what I would do, presumably, right? So then I would, take that information. The first thing that I would do is reach out to both of the providers. I did not need to hear back from both of them. I only needed to hear back from one of them, but I did need 2. After I got some kind of feedback, like, yes, I did see this person, or, I don't remember that person, or, yeah, they're great, they have a foot thing, or like, whatever information is exchanged, then I would call to confirm their identity with their employer. So I didn't really need any information about them. I just needed to know that they work where they said they worked, right? So this looks like looking up where they say that they work, calling them, and then just asking for them by name. And so if the person on the other end of the line says, yeah, no problem, I'll connect you immediately, then you hang up. If they say so-and-so doesn't work here, that's the end of the interaction. I'm never gonna meet that person in person. Once the appointment happens, if it's an in-call, it means that they're coming to me. If it's an out-call, it means that I'm going to them. In either case, before I cross the threshold or they cross the threshold, I need to see their ID. So this will look like me standing in the hotel hallway, or it will look like them standing in the hotel hallway while they hand me their ID, and I confirm that the name that they gave me matches, that I did all of the background check work on, matches the name that I did all of this work on. Wow. And so that's, once somebody does all of that, it's a pretty safe bet that the, spectrum of bad things that can happen is pretty mitigated at that point. Yeah. It also does, that kind of screening establishes me as the professional and the person who is dictating the sort of terms of the way that we're going to spend our time. And it puts me in a really strong negotiating position. I did not have any of those tools when I went to college and started participating in like the hookup culture. So it was in college, right, with guys often my own age that I was giving free sex to, who would do stupid shit like slip off the condom or try to get away with doing things that were outside of the bounds of what we agreed on. Paying clients very rarely pushed those kinds of boundaries. Or if they did, I had lots of tools to call a spade and make sure that we either nipped that in the bud or ended the appointment or just chose not to see that guy again.
You're so smart. So I do think it's important to reemphasize what you already said that people may not have let register. Because of the position of not being desperate, you could take the time to do all of those things.
Absolutely.
Whereas
and most importantly, say no to clients that made me uncomfortable for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And that was also true in my professional life, right? Like, I felt very disempowered when I first came to New York and needed to make rent and didn't have that much free time and didn't have that much availability. And I put up with a lot of bullshit at my restaurant gigs, at my tutoring gigs, at my Starbucks gigs, things that in retrospect feel very abusive, very exploitative, because I was desperate for money. And I think that's true of desperate people do desperate things. So again, when we're having a conversation about reducing violence and exploitation, we should really be having a conversation about reducing people's vulnerabilities, not dictating or policing how they make that money. Yeah. That's not what determines the exploitation.
Well, and I've said this on the show so many times, and it bears repeating, that we do not have a labor shortage. I think we have a shortage of people willing to be exploited and abused because they spent the entirety of the pandemic thinking, that company's clearing billions off the backs of my labor or our labor, and I live 10 people to a 1-bedroom. I can barely find enough money for bread. I'm going to pull back on this experience, and I'm just going to sit this one out because I'm suffering anyway. That's what I think happened, and is why people aren't eager to go back in. Good. We see eye to eye on that. Okay, good. So you had said earlier on, and yes, folks, I will get back to the regular questions because some of these regular questions people are going to want you to answer more so than any other guest.
Yeah.
But I want to know why you said sex work was or is less torturous than your experience at Applebee's and Starbucks.
Part of it was that I got to keep 100% of the money, right? So I think it was the fact that I wasn't creating value for an employer or a corporation or a company, that I was deciding how much my services cost and how much I wanted to be paid, and those were the same number. So that was a big part of it. The other part of it was how much, just the amount of time, right? So, I wasn't working 8-hour shifts, 10-hour shifts, 12-hour shifts, right? I was booking my time 1 and 2 hours at a time, which I think frees up a lot of time, right? For me to feel like a person. This is one reason why so many people who are caregivers engage in this work, right? Whether they're caring for children or elderly parents or, disabled family members. Sex work creates a level of flexibility and time autonomy that is very important for people feeling like they're able to make choices and dictate, their own life, right? How they're spending their time.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Another part of it was, again, the sort of feeling in control and feeling that I got to negotiate my own boundaries, right? So like when I was working at Applebee's or Starbucks, right, 2 big corporate or La Plan Quotidienne, right, like corporate restaurants, so much was dictated to me about the way that I engaged with clients, right, or like tables. And I didn't have a lot of tools for self-advocacy if those tables violated the social contract, right? Like if they were a dick to me or, and so as a sex worker, I got to explicitly negotiate those boundaries on a case-by-case basis. As a service provider working in food and bev, I felt like I was performing a lot more emotional labor in terms of like pretending to be engaged or like pretending to be on for pennies on the dollar compared to what I was being paid to perform, channeling the goddess, right?
I love it. Okay. And can I ask, so speak to me as someone who would love a flexible schedule, but would be terrified to do that work. What is the solution for people who don't, or especially I'll say women or people who identify as female? What is the solution?
People of all genders.
People of all genders, yeah.
Work, right? Men have engaged in this work. Non-binary folks, trans folks. I think that we have a story about how this is like women's work.
Yeah.
And there's a long history there. But the cis men and the full gender spectrum have always been participants in this work.
So when you describe the freedom of schedule and the attraction to the work that gives you autonomy, what would you say to people who are who sex work does not feel appealing to and they want to do something else that gives the same sort of autonomy? What would you say? Is there an equivalent?
I don't know if there's an equivalent. I'm certainly not an expert on the jobs that are available out there. You know, my husband works in online marketing and seems to have a lot of flexibility with his, life, which is nice. I've seen other people do it. I just, I don't know. I don't know what those jobs are. What I will say is that sex work, like every other job, isn't for everyone. And I think that you can listen to that voice inside of you, and it's important not to engage in work that makes you feel terrible. Like I, for example, could never work in a slaughterhouse, right? That's just something that I couldn't do, right? It would that would be a kind of soul death for me. Saying that even as a meat eater, right? Like I don't think that we should criminalize slaughterhouses or whatever. I can't do it. And so if that's true for you, then I do not push yourself, right, to do this work.
I love that answer. Okay. All right. Well, so I'm going back to the list of questions. Okay. What was your favorite job of all of the customer service jobs that you've had?
I loved the sitting in the hallway thing.
I can't get over that. I can't get over
condescend. Yeah, because I got to condescend to my customer base or client base, right? Stay in your room, that's great. To be a faux authority figure in a way that I couldn't with the tutoring students, right?
Sure.
It wasn't like, do your homework or there are no consequences. I can't even pretend, right? All these rich kids are like, or what? And I was like, I don't know.
I don't have an answer.
I did great on the SAT and I'm taking a train ride to do this. So, I don't know what to tell you. Maybe it doesn't matter.
That's hilarious.
So yeah, I hated tutoring. That was a kind of one-on-one clientele where I felt like weird about it. Working in busy restaurants is not for me. Working at busy coffee. I worked at the Starbucks on 53rd in Lexington.
Oh my God. You have to tell people why that's...
Shit.
Oh my... You have to tell people that don't know New York.
Sure. So our doors opened at 8 a.m. to a line of people who work in finance who are late and upset with you.
Cocaine bros.
Also somehow don't know what coffee they want when they get to you, even though they stood in line for 20 minutes to talk to you. I don't know why.
And they're cocaine.
I don't know why that's the thing.
Oh my God. But
Starbucks, probably it was a combination of like the hours, right? I was working morning shifts. I was doing stand-up comedy until very late at night. I just got into New York, which meant that like every weekend the subway like fucked me up, right? Because I was like snot bubble tear crying because like the F train's on the E line and nothing, and I like don't know how to get where I'm going. But yeah, that was I have never been brought to tears so often at work as I was working at Starbucks the first 6 months that I lived in New York.
You have to, can you give me, like, was it because they're just cocaine bros that are yelling, or what's the...
Yeah, there's a lot of yelling and condescension. I remember this one day where like we ran out of cups. Like, I don't remember, like it just, we didn't have any cups. And we were short-staffed, right? So I was doing like cashier and pastry and we had like one like absolutely overwhelmed barista. And I remember watching this woman like fighting her way upstream like a fucking salmon to tell me that she was allergic to foam and that she'd requested a no foam latte and that there was some foam in this latte, and so that we had to redo it, and not having the bandwidth or the ability or the like social positioning to call her out on her. No one's allergic.
That's milk.
You can be allergic to milk, but you're not allergic to foam. That's not a thing.
It's not a thing.
You're allergic to air? I don't understand. Yeah. Yep. And so it was a combination of like, this is before Starbucks was unionizing, right? And so we were chronically short-staffed, chronically under-resourced, and we were always overwhelmed, right? It was just there was never a moment in that location where you didn't have somebody that needed something, which makes it really hard to do all of the things that normally when you work in a restaurant, you have off hours, right? Or slow
slower
hours.
periods.
That's when you make the coffee. That's when you refill the cups. That's when you, find your
Catch
pens
up.
or whatever it was. And because there was just no stopping ever, it felt really overwhelming all of the time. And I was also really overwhelmed, right? Like I just moved to New York. I, was doing a lot.
Yeah. And I think the thing with that particular location, again, just it's specific to New York because I think it's hard for people to visualize unless they've seen it. Like a line out the door, from my limited experience with that, I mean, that Starbucks is like infamous. People just know of it because it's so fucking busy. And the line out the door thing is part of the curb appeal because so much of, people forget Manhattan's an island. And so there's limited amount of space and the bodies just keep coming in. Like people just keep coming. Yeah.
A wave of people. It's a wave of a very specific kind of people too, right? These are really high earners, right? These are people that have like really self-important jobs. And so it's just a level, and again, speaking as a relatively privileged person, right? I grew up upper middle class. And so it was a eye-opening shock to me that people felt comfortable treating me
any kind of way,
like a piece of shit, right? So, as a sex worker, I did not experience that. People felt so lucky, right, to be spending special time with me. When I worked in North Carolina, both as a hostess and also as a line cook, I didn't have that level. I didn't have that level of condescension. Like, yes, my managers sexually harassed me. Yes, customers are hard and irritating, but not the way that finance bros talk down to
anyone,
baristas,
but specifically baristas. Yes, yeah. Oh, it's such a specific energy. It's so rough. So, how long did you last at working at that location? That's a long ass time, Kaytlin.
Yeah, I got demoted I couldn't hack it as a proper barista. They kept trying to promote me to barista, and I was too afraid of the milk machine
because it's hot.
I kept being demoted back down to. I kept burning myself.
Yeah, you can.
I never really graduated from cashier and pastry person because I kept hurting myself with the milk steamer.
It hurts. I've been there.
It does hurt.
Yeah, I've been there. So you last there for 6 months. So your favorite job you said was the chaperoning job. Would you say Starbucks?
That happened after.
That was after. So would you say Starbucks was the least favorite? Or what's the least?
Starbucks is pretty, I think it was really life circumstance.
Sure.
But yeah, I think Starbucks was one of the worst jobs for sure.
What is the weirdest thing you've been asked to do whilst on the clock? And get as specific as you'd like or be as vague as you would like.
At Starbucks, I was often asked to clean human feces from the bathroom because we don't have public toilets in New York City. Yeah. And that's a great example of like the presence of boundaries in sex work and the assumption of complete lack of boundaries. It shocked my manager when I was like, no, I will not do that. And they were like, you have to do that. It's part of your job.
No,
and
it's
I was
not.
like, show me on my job description where cleaning up human poop is part of my problem. Because again, as a professional dick sucker, I can tell you no to scat play. Not on the list of things I'm doing. Certainly not on the list of things I'm doing for, let's call it 1/100th of what I would be paid.
Good God.
To engage in genitals, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
You're making such a great point in the myriad great points you've made that we think that when we are, I'll speak for myself. I have this like weird thing with authority where if you have employed me and I'm working at a restaurant or wherever else, fill in the blank, that I just do whatever when I'm there because it's under sort of the purview of the job because I'm being paid to physically be there. So I guess I need to do that. The abuse that I have said yes to just because I think, well, I guess I have to, and not knowing that I can say no. I think you empowered yourself with a no early on. I mean, I what a gift.
Which made me a terrible employee, right? Like, so I really, on like, right. So like, so I wouldn't do it, right? So, and one of the jobs that I got after that, I worked at Le Pont Quotidien in Rockefeller Center, which is another really busy place. And I was there during the transition from family owned to corporate owned. And so one of the first things that we did is we lost our support staff, right? So they weren't paying busboys, they weren't paying baristas, they weren't paying all these people. And almost like overnight, right? Like I'd been working there for like 3 or 4 months and I had all of this support as a server and I like tipped out folks, right? But then overnight they were like, you need to bus your own tables, you need to make your own drinks, you need to do this, that, and the other. And I was like, cool, how much more are you paying me? And they were like, oh, well, that's not a thing. And so that was amazing. And I was like, well, I'm paid by the tables, right? So like, if you want people doing work that isn't customer serving, then you need to hire other people for that. The other thing that location started doing was charging us, the servers, for the credit card fees. So we were not allowed to tell people that we like didn't take Amex or didn't take like high credit card fees. I know it's illegal, but it just started happening one day. And I scheduled like 3 meetings with my manager of like, can you explain this to me? It's saying on my paycheck that I'm being charged these like Amex fees, but like I'm pretty sure that that's like you guys' job thing. And they kept like talking in circles around me and then I got fired for being like late too many days in a row or something, like, which was another thing that irritated me about restaurants is that like they were like, you have to be here, your shift is from, you know, let's call it like 2 p.m. to 8 p.m., right? And so you have to be there at 2 p.m. on the dot. But when 8 p.m. rolls around, if they're not ready to let you go yet, then you just have to stay there. And so I was like, well, does time matter or does time not matter? Because if I have to be on time, then like you need to get me out of here on time. And that doesn't seem to be the arrangement. So if we're just being flexy on time, we can do that. But
let's do it.
Yeah, so I was unmanageable, right? Like you just like, I couldn't, it just not a great, you did not, It was really frustrating for restaurant managers because they interviewed so well. Because they were like, oh my gosh, she's so charming. She's going to be a great server. It's like, well, I'm going to radicalize your staff and I'm not going to do any of the things that you asked me to. So
I'm going to get us all little pins on our lapel. We're going to be in a club and you're going to hate it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, no, I mean, I wish that I had the follow through or self-determination or just bandwidth at that moment in my life to unionize. I was just a complainer.
Well, but no, I mean, you're bringing up though points that are so important that we remember that we do have the power for that. I had a job that hated me because when it was a pooled house, which I fucking hate. And there was a bartender who was very clearly stealing cash tips. She refused to let anybody watch her count it. And then she would go in the office and tell us what the number was. And I kept bringing it up. And I said, she needs to count that in front of someone. And why isn't she counting it here behind the bar where we all are so that we know how much cash, because the cash also went onto our checks, which is insane. It's supposed to be, at least you get the cash right away. And they were all like, she's been here for forever. She doesn't need to. And I was like, fuck all. I quit because I was like, if that is something that is not important to you, what else are you anyway? Okay. So Okay. I want to be mindful of time. Okay. Was there ever an incident that made them ask to speak to your manager? Or was it mostly you going to the managers being like, oh, we about to have a chat?
Yeah, there's a lot of that. Let's see. I had one incident. I'm actually, now that I am an adult, I think I might be on the customer's side here in this one. So I was 16 or 17 years old working at the Armadillo Grill as a line cook, which I should not have been hired for, but it doesn't matter. And it was an open kitchen. So for to-go orders, we handed the food directly to people. This really wasn't a dramatic, this is going to be a very boring story, but like long story short, I was goofing off in the kitchen because it was a slow period, because this was a restaurant in North Carolina where such a thing existed. And I like dropped the to-go box a little bit. So it went from like being like this to like this for a second.
So flat on your hand to the side hand for people who...
Yeah.
Got it.
And I didn't think about it. I was just like, oh, didn't hit the ground. Great.
Great.
And then handed it to the person who then opened it, and it was like, like all of the food, like just spilled out of the thing because it had all been shoved over to one side. And they came over and probably could have talked to me and been like, hey, can you remake this? And the answer would have been yes.
Yeah.
But instead, they went to the manager and said, hey, I ordered a thing that's supposed to look like this. It looks like that. And the manager was like, why does it look like that? And I was like, oof, physics has not occurred to me. I'm so sorry.
Gravity. I don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Yeah. But there, nothing bad happened. You know, I'm trying to think back. Oh, I did lose my cool. I lost a tutoring gig because I lost my cool at a classroom of young people who were doing their best, and I was not doing a very good job taking care of myself. Yeah.
How did you?
And they fired me. And I have been justifiably fired from almost every service job that I've ever had. And there's never been a moment where I was fired and I was like, why?
What happened here?
What happened? I'm nailing this.
Okay. So was there a last straw that got you out of any of these jobs where you were like, flip a table, get me out of here, I'm done?
Yep. It was the same company that hired me to do the hallway chaperoning also did transportation logistics for big events. So it was my responsibility. So for example, when the Pope came and visited New York, I wrangled the press bus. So like the International Press Corps was on this bus and we got a police escort to like where the Pope was. And it was my job to like stand at the bus with a clipboard and be like, hear ye, all ye headed to the Pope, get on this bus. I hope your name is on this list. Making sure that people knew where they were supposed to go.
Yeah.
And that was great, but I had to do the same thing for the PGA golf tournament. And that was horrific because it was it was after 9/11, and so there were all of these like extra security things where it was my job to tell the mostly rich people who were coming to the PGA that they couldn't bring a bag. And so, exactly. So I was like enforcing this ridiculous rule, and I was the arbiter of that. And then I told people, like, you can just leave your bag here and we'll watch it. Like, because I was, I'll be there all day. We'll watch this bag, and then, you can come back and get it. And my manager was like, I don't think you should do that. I think you should tell people that they have to throw their bag away. And I was like, well, that doesn't feel right to me. And like, it doesn't feel like it cost me anything to just have this pile of bags. And so without consulting me, he just threw them all away, which made me a liar to all of these people. And so I quit on the spot.
Good job, you. That's so shitty. My word matters to me. Yeah, that's a big deal. Yeah. Oh, I would have been upset. Yeah, I am my father's daughter in that I have a very, very low tolerance for being lied to. Same girl. By my employer, supervisor, or person. It's a one and done for me. As soon as you show me you're a liar, I believe you, and I'm all set. I'm out. Yep. Yeah. I'm the same way. God, it's gonna kill me though. That pursuit of justice is gonna be the reason I can clock out early. There's a great comic that my best friend in the whole wide world sends me every 3 to 4 months since she found it, and it's an old Viking talking to a young Viking. And the first thing is you got to pick your battles. Mm. And then the second window is that's too many battles, put some back. And then the third one is that's still too many battles. And then the last one is you get one battle. So that's pick a battle. It's so relatable. It makes me nauseous, actually. Okay, great. Okay. Do you find that the customers wield more power than the laborers, or do you find that the laborers wield more power than the customers? They just don't utilize it. How do you feel the power balance is in a customer service setting?
that's completely dependent on set setting and circumstance, right? So I have absolutely been in jobs where I felt absolutely powerless with customers who it felt like they could demand whatever they wanted. And I have felt very empowered to self-advocate. Never more so than as a sex worker, but I have, like, one of the best bartending gigs I ever had was this failing restaurant in the West Village. The owner was like combination starting to suffer from sort of like dementia or Alzheimer's, and was also losing a fight to the landlord. So like the restaurant was just failing. But because of that, he just gave me the keys. Just gave me the keys to the spot. And so I ran an open mic from 10 p.m. until 6 o'clock in the morning for this like glorious 9-month period of time where I lived 2 blocks away from the restaurant. And so we would like lock the doors after 4 a.m. when you're supposed to legally close. And now we're like smoking inside. And it was just like this very free space. But I was the bartender. And if anyone wanted a drink that had more than one ingredient in it, the answer was no. So, I'd pour wine, I'd pour whiskey, I would open beer. But if you wanted a martini or a Manhattan Sunrise or something, absolutely not. No, I am in charge here. That's not what we do. There's so many cocktail places around here that do that. I'm running an open mic. I don't have that kind of time. I'm not here to make you drinks. Yeah, so that was an incredibly empowered moment. But that was just because, I was unsupervised.
What a gift.
But it felt great. I loved that. I love that job.
Man, I'm jealous. Like and you got to do that for 9 months. Scene. Were you turning a profit or were you helping him? Like, was it busy when you were running it?
No, we made tens of dollars a shift. It was, nobody was.
Yeah. Okay. Have you ever?
We weren't stealing. And
I believe you.
No one was making any money.
And no one was making money. Bless his heart. And I assume it has since closed. Like people can't find it.
Now it's a bakery for pets now.
I know exactly.
For dogs and cats. I know. It was one of the great listening rooms of the West Village.
Oh my gosh.
It's gone.
Gosh, that spot right by your place too is such. Anyway, okay. Yeah. She lives in the best neighborhood. Has a place in the best neighborhood in the world. Doesn't live it. Anyway, yes. Have you ever told a customer straight up to fuck off?
Yeah, all the time at that place, right? Yeah.
You would say the words fuck off.
Yeah, I want a vodka soda. No, I'll pour you a vodka, but no.
That's awesome. Okay. Yeah. Have you ever gone toe to toe with a customer in a situation where you were like, I will not back down. Like, I am right, yes. You are wrong.
At that restaurant, the first night that we ran the open mic, we had a comedian who was new, right? Green comic, who did not make the room feel comfortable. And we had a drunk regular customer who wanted me to stop her from speaking. And that's not how open mics work. And so, yeah, I told him to go fuck himself. And he actually wrote me a letter of apology the next day because he got drunk and belligerent. And so I was like, yeah, no, I'm not. No, you're in the wrong here. Yeah, she's not funny yet, but we did not advertise this as a show. This is an open mic. And if you feel uncomfortable, then you are free to leave. But this space is now for the performers, actually. And so your discomfort means nothing to me because you paid $0 for the show.
Do you ever think of owning a restaurant or doing anything on top of...
Absolutely
never,
not.
Right?
No, I have a hard time keeping inventory in just our house pantry. Like like avocados turned to soup all day I can't be trusted with a perishable product. Okay. That's not for me.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question that I go with this question however you want, but I do promise this question is on every episode unrelated to this one.
Sure.
How many bodily fluids have been on your person whilst you were on the clock at any of these jobs?
Ooh, man, let's see. There's obviously the cum, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, although there's shockingly not that much of it in this, like condoms are such a part of the
experience,
culture,
yeah.
Right? Yeah. So, but sure, it's not like battery acid, right? Like, but way more, I think, like spittle and like people's eating food
yep.
at places. And then again, the Starbucks, the pee and the poop and the whatever else in the bathroom muck of that. I mean, but I'm not a nurse. It's not been.
Yeah.
I can't think of a moment where there was anyone else's blood. Like I've cut myself, right? Like in kitchens or
we do it all the
other
time.
Places. So I guess I've had semen, blood, spit.
Okay, the obvious ones. Okay.
The body stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Do you tip?
Do I tip?
Yeah.
Oh yes, extravagantly.
How much?
It's going to be a problem. Yeah.
Like, what's your percentage?
If it's given, if it's one of the, like, whatever the most is, so that's often like 20 or 25%. I believe that like that $2 like for coffee or whatever. So sometimes that's 100%, right? But it depends on the coffee. I'll do guilt tipping. So like if anyone's mean at the restaurant, then there's just like an extra $10 or something, right? I'm not dealing with the kind of liquidity or, I'm not in the tax bracket. I'm not leaving like hundreds of dollars.
Sure.
Sure. Yeah. But yes, I consider myself a good tipper, and I often tell the table that I'm at and sometimes my server that I may have been New York City's worst waitress. So however bad it is, you're doing great. You're doing great. Yeah.
Do you ever not tip?
I have never not tipped because I was unhappy with the service. I have not tipped so a thing that happened to me for a chunk of my life is that I was very cash poor, so I didn't have any cash on me, and I would order like club sodas or stuff. And so if I wasn't charged, if I didn't have a credit, then I couldn't tip, right?
Sure.
So I'd be in a situation of like wanting to tip somebody, especially because they were giving me free club soda, but then they would often communicate to me of like, just take it and just be a pretty girl at the bar. You're fine. Like, just, go do this. Fine. That's, I understand what's happening. And the time, please don't sit here and take my time telling me that you can't give me cash money. I have real drinks to make for people that can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Give us the example of, or the, either an archetype of, or an example of the worst customer you ever had to interact with.
Ooh. There's a woman that made me cry at Starbucks because we were really busy, which was not unusual. And I was at the cashier, and I was cash register. I was the cashier at the cash register. And she was using a Starbucks card to pay for her drinks, but she needed to put more money on the card. So it was like, we were like $3 or $4 short or something. And I yelled out to her, "Excuse me, miss, you actually still owe me some money." Like, I remember it specifically, right? And I was like, I thought we were doing like a fun banter thing, but that triggered something in her, right? Like, I don't know if like she grew up without money or she had a lot of like class consciousness. I don't know what was going on, but the suggestion that she did not have enough money to pay for this like sent her off on, and she dressed me down right in the store. Yeah. And I started to shake, and she did whatever it was she needed to do. I don't remember if she pulled out another credit card or if she like put more money on the card, or I don't remember how I left my body.
I would have too.
But my manager asked me if I needed a minute, which was really unusual there because we didn't
have a minute.
We didn't have minutes,
yeah.
Right? But I had to be taken off the floor.
Holy shit.
Break down in the back. Yeah.
Did anyone come and intervene when she was dressing you down to be like, that's enough? See, that's gross. That grosses me out. If I saw that at a place, I would immediately intervene. Okay.
I got a lot of sympathetic eye contact. Right.
BFD. Like, I guess it does help, but like someone should step in and be like, enough talking to her like that. I get, but whatever. Okay. All right, folks. Well, we're going to move on to the good stuff. We hope you save room for dessert. Do you have time to do dessert?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perfect.
I have time for dessert.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, I definitely have time.
Who doesn't have time for dessert? Let's do dessert. Okay. Yeah. All right. What is the nicest thing a customer has done for you whilst you were working?
Oof. I feel like I want to take sex work out of this equation because like the scale of that is just
Is it wild?
It's wild. Yeah. I mean, I had a client put me on payroll, like, who made it possible for me to get the West Village apartment. You know, like, I mean, levels of like benevolence that really pale, I think, yeah.
Holy shit, I'm changing my views on whether or not I want to do it for work.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
I mean, that was a long game,
sure,
right? It took me like 9 months of negotiation to get there. But that negotiation changed my life, because for the first time I had a provable source of income, right? Which is what allowed me to secure housing.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because everything else is under the table if you're not. Oh, I see why you had to maintain. Now that makes sense. I wondered, I was like, why is she working at Starbucks if she's doing this other thing? I get it.
Because you need
something on paper.
Yeah.
Wow, girl.
Right. But then they would look at my Starbucks paper and they'd be like, you can't afford this place. And it's like, well, it's complicated.
Yeah, I can. I actually can.
I can, though. If you let me in, I promise.
I'll pay you so hard. I will pay you more than
so hard.
Okay. Well, so if we take sex work off of the table, what would be the nicest thing in a different customer service job? Like, did any of the tutoring parents ever like give you a really crazy gift, or did you ever get like, I don't know, acknowledged?
A lot of, like, I had a shocking number actually of like people I waited on come to shows.
Oh, come on.
Yeah. Yeah. So, so I developed rapport, and I think that time will tell. I haven't commanded an audience in New York for a minute, but yeah, we will see if some of those folks still show up. So I've gotten folks in the service industry jobs to be like supportive of the art career. I think is really cool.
It's really significant, actually. It really is meaningful. And I wish people knew how even just being a butt in the seat. Yeah. It's like you took time out of your life, and you don't see me just as this person that gives you coffee. You see me as a whole person, which is that is really what I've found universally to be true. What I've learned through this show from the number of people who have said it. The overarching summary is see me as a fully realized human outside of this. Yeah. Can you give me an example of your favorite customer interaction that you can think of where something was very kindly said, or a customer that you had that was a regular that was very, very sweet? Again, sex work off the table, of just some interaction where you were like, yeah, they came every Sunday for coffee and they were really lovely, or something like that.
Yeah. When I was working at Shark's Pizza in Charleston, South Carolina, as an undergraduate history major, there was a lawyer that would come in and sit at the bar like most weekday afternoons. And I remember that this was right when late-term abortion was criminalized by the Supreme Court, and there was like a lot of stuff going on. And we had a lot of fun. He had a lot of fun with me, and the feeling was mutual of like going back and forth. Because at that point I was still like, probably I'll go to law school. So we would have these like fun debate inspired conversations while I was, making pizza dough or refilling Cokes or Diet Cokes or other stuff. That was a weird, that whole restaurant was bananas, because the reason that I was making pizza sometimes is because our only pizza chef also had a raging Coke habit. So he would sometimes disappear in the middle of the afternoon for hours at a time to procure more Coke. And so my option as the only waitress would be like, hey guys, I know this is a pizza place. We have sandwiches, or I can make you a pizza, but it's not going to be shaped the way
a pizza is shaped.
It should be. And most people were actually pretty cool with that. Most people, they took their heart-shaped oval, sometimes square pizzas in stride.
On the chin.
That was a good... Yeah, and I was too young at that point to be like, hey, maybe it's not my job to do everything here. I think that like an older and more mature version of me would be like, my job is to be a waitress, and if you don't have a chef, then I think we should all go home. But instead of that, I was like, I can do it.
I got it.
I got this. I can do it. So I'd come back to the table covered in flour,
sure,
with their misshapen pizza. And we'd all laugh and laugh.
I mean, it's kind of a sweet experience that, like, if you have something where you're going to a restaurant expecting one thing and then you get this really authentic thing that happens instead, I kind of would love that. I'd be like, well, not what I expected, but okay. What is the best time you have ever had at work?
100% Vivaldi between the hours of midnight and 6 o'clock in the morning when we were creating our own world.
Yeah.
And I am so proud of the artists that showed up and the things that happened in the room and the space that we were able to create together. I think was really, really something special.
It sounds like it. That sounds like a magical time in your life that you'll always look back on with like, holy crap, what a fond. Only in New York.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was, and if I ever run a rsubject, of course, that's my nightmare, right?
Yeah,
of like, you're violating all of the laws.
Yeah.
There are so many fines that we are
Incurring.
subjected to at this point. You stupid girl. But it was totally magic, and it was and he was losing the business already.
Bless his heart.
Yeah,
okay.
Bless him.
What is the best lesson you've personally learned from any of these jobs?
It feels almost cliche to say it, but none of those jobs, even the best one, even Vivaldi, love you back. And so I think maintaining the lesson that I learned as a sex worker, which is that you can always say no and you can always walk away. Holding that. I wish on my younger self, like I wish that I'd walked away from Starbucks sooner. I wish that I'd walked away from Le Pain Quotidien sooner. I wish, I have quit a lot of jobs, and I have also wasted a lot of time stuck in a narrative about personal responsibility or, people pleasing or like I said, or I don't want to be a person who can't hack it. And none of these hourly jobs are worth a feeling of personal discomfort of like doing something that feels bad over and over again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That has never been said on here, and we've done 6,000 episodes. So that's
great.
That's so empowering and lovely. And what is one piece of advice you would give to customers who interact with customer service workers?
Oh, great question. I mean, my first instinct is like, oh, it's so easy to just not be a dick.
Girl, I
don't know if that's true. Maybe it's hard for people.
Maybe it's hard. Clearly, it's hard for some people.
Yeah, you said it earlier, right? Of like the person that is, waiting on you, driving you, tutoring you, checking you into a thing is a person. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important as like adults that live in society that we do not succumb to the temptation to make like our emotional state, right? Like service people's problem, right? Like you can be having a bad day and still not be an asshole to the person that's making you coffee.
What?
Right?
That's wild.
Yeah. Yeah. and I've seen it done. And sometimes it looks like, hey, Kaytlin, happy Tuesday. I'm having a bad day. Oh, sorry, Sam. That sucks for you. Here's your latte.
Yeah. End of interaction.
That easy. Yeah. Yep. You don't have to pretend, right? You don't have to you don't have to make me feel good, but you don't have to make your bad feelings my problem.
Okay. Well, last question in this section, just specific to you because I'm so curious. If you could tell your younger self something about the trajectory of your sort of work history or kind of artistic history, what is the one thing that you're like, dang it, I wish I would have known this before I got into any of these jobs?
That's a really good question, but it's not the question I want to answer. I told myself something over and over and over again as a young person, and it's the thing that I told myself that allowed me to take the risks that I took to get to the place that I am today. And everyone told me that I was wrong, and I fucking wasn't. And that was, your worst case scenario is just not that bad. Go ahead and quit. Go ahead and do whatever. Like, your worst case scenario is not that bad. It's okay to walk away from things that are not working. And I said that over and over again, right? Yes, I can take this unpaid opportunity. Yes, I can fly to San Francisco. Yes, I can rack up some credit card debt. Yes, I can do all of the. Why? Because my worst case scenario is not that bad. I can take this risk.
Oh, that makes me want to cry. I love that a lot. What a powerful way to end. Well, Kaytlin, I'm having you back 10 more times, but
God, I loved this. This was so fun, Kate. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here. Please remind people how they can see your show, how they can find you on the socials, how they can hear your voice, all the things, please.
Yeah, if you loved this, you will love the Oldest Profession podcast, where every episode we do a deep dive into a different sex worker from history or a different old pro. You can hopefully see my show, Horror's Eye View, coming to a city near you, maybe, especially if you email us about it, especially if you have a venue in mind. And you can follow everything that we do at Old Pros, including all of my appearances, speaking engagements, op-eds that I publish, all of the sex worker advocacy work that I do, by staying in the know like an old pro and getting on our email list, which you can do at oldprosonline.org. You can follow us across social media platforms at Old Pros Online, and you can stay tuned for my, once every 6 week Instagram post at Kaytlin Bailey, if that's something that you're into. But most of what we do is at Old Pros.
Okay, I'm asking you one more question, then we're going to wrap up.
Sure.
How did you detach from society's shame around that work, and how did you tell your family?
Great question. Those were two distinct steps. So I did not internalize society's shame about sex work until 7 years after my first appointment, when I first came to New York and I got into an abusive relationship with a man who had all of those opinions, right? So his position was that the sex that I had been paid to perform years before we met was a personal insult to his masculinity.
Grow up.
And that took me on a deep rabbit hole, because like the thing about abusive relationships that I think people forget is like, it's such a mind fuck, right? When you're talking to somebody who is like in it, it's a little bit like talking to a drug addict, right? Of like, I can see that the heroin is bad for me, and also I can't stop doing it. So I was very motivated to find some way, right, of like making that make sense to me, of reconciling that, right? And so I spent almost a year really entertaining the possibility that I had like permanently damaged myself, or that this was just evidence of like mental illness or some kind of personality disorder, or that I was like unlovable or like unpartnerable in this like really fundamental way. And that eventually led to my first one-woman show, Contagious, which is a deconstruction of that, having gone through it. And Contagious is also how I came out to my parents. The show itself is about coming out to my father, but I didn't come out to my father. I just wrote and produced and performed and promoted a play about it. But it turns out when you're an only child and your parents also have the internet, that, it doesn't matter if they don't come and see the show. They see all of the press about it and people send it to them.
Oh my God.
So that led to me coming out to my parents, and it happened in a couple of steps. I came home and my mom and I went to therapy because I am a parody of myself. And in therapy, which was the venue that we'd chosen to have this difficult conversation, my mom said, "I can't believe you sold your body." And I said, "I didn't. I still have it." And the therapist laughed, and I declared victory at that moment. From that meeting, I then was sent back to the house to have the conversation with my father, right? So like I'd written the show, and my father's a Green Beret, and like the narrative of our family is that like he made all of these sacrifices, right? That all this valor, all this bloodshed, all of the wars, right? So that I didn't have to, right? So the fact that I chose to engage in sex work was this very personal betrayal of like, I worked so hard to give you the accoutrements of a middle-class life. And I was like, yeah, I have a history degree. And no respect for authority. You're welcome. You did it.
Hats off, Dad. Berets off.
Yeah, nailed it. So that was a hard conversation. And I want to be honest with your listeners about how that went. So we got very drunk. And we had sort of a circular conversation about, a child is an arrow and the parents are the bow, and you can't see where you're aiming and you just pull back and your arrow goes out, and it's the parents' job to aim, but you can't decide where it lands, and all children disappoint their parents. And we had this very circular conversation where we arrived at I will always be proud of you. And I was like, great, cool, awesome. Don't get excited. So then I was like, great, Dad and I had the conversation. I came out to my parents. I am a sex worker. I now can become a sex worker rights advocate because I've pulled the Band-Aid off and can live publicly as this person that did that. So I wrote my first Vice article about coming out to my dad, and then that was published. And then my dad called me and was like, I didn't know that you were a prostitute. I thought that you were talking about your abortion. And I was like, Dad, I don't have any fucking shame about my abortion. What are you talking about?
Oh no.
And
oh,
so,
no.
and we did it again, right? So we had the whole thing, and eventually my father came to understand me as a freedom fighter, right? As somebody who was pushing, right, to liberate folks, and he stopped using the word slut as an insult. And my dad really came very far before the Alzheimer's and dementia set in towards the end of his life, where I had the opportunity to come out to him over and over again because
no.
It's my job because he couldn't remember. So he would do these what are you up to? And I was like, I'm speaking at a conference. What are you talking about? Prostitution law. Why? Dad,
no.
Your daughter's a freedom fighter for sex workers.
Oh my God. Show girl. I can't breathe and I can't. Where's my body? Oh, I'm so glad I asked. I was so glad I asked. I was like, we should wrap this up. And I was like, I gotta know.
Yeah.
Oh, my whole body.
Really good place before we got to a really, really good place before he died.
Passed,
but it really was a one step forward, two steps back dance that
every
we did
day
for 4 years.
Yeah. Girl, help. What a great way. Yeah, what a great way to get you comfy with just talking about it and not feeling any kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I got really good at it.
Yeah.
Right? And then towards the end there, he's like, what? And I would just give him the line and he'd be like,
okay.
Yeah, that does feel right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, my daughter is a sex worker rights advocate.
Okay, here we go.
Sex worker is another word for prostitute. I understand.
Okay, got it. Freedom fighter. Got it. Bless his
Freedom
heart.
fighter for horse. Nailing it. It's my daughter.
Well, folks, we're going to drop your checks now. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to help us out here at Service from Hell, we'd love to have you subscribe, rate, or review the show wherever you listen, because come on, y'all know those ratings help. If you want to get in touch with us here at Service from Hell directly, send us your receipts to servicefromhellpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from you. Remember, if you can't afford to tip, you can't afford to go out. So don't be garbage and be good to people. It's easier that way. Kaytlin, you are an utter delight. I am not at all surprised. I have so many more questions, but your time is so valuable. Thank you. Our listeners are going to freak out and love this episode. I know, or episodes. You're just delightful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Kate. I had a really, really great time.
Me too.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
You're the best. All right, folks, find Kaytlin on all the things. Go see her show. If you're in New York or San Francisco or any city at all, follow her. We'll be back next week. Thank you, folks, so much for listening. Good night. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us here at Service from Hell with our two-parter with the lovely and delightful and utterly authentic, I can't stop saying it, writer, stand-up comic, and leader in the growing movement to decriminalize sex work, Kaytlin Bailey. Kaytlin gave us so much of her time and answered all of the questions honestly and authentically and openly, and it just is such a delight. It makes my job easier, and it makes my job really, really fun. I was really looking forward to this interview, and it did not disappoint. So we're going to try and convince Kaytlin to come back, but in the meantime, go see her solo show. It is going to be in Manhattan by the time this airs, and then it will most likely be coming to other cities. It's definitely coming to San Francisco, but she's looking at coming to LA and anywhere in between. So reach out to her on her website and suggest a city for her to come by and do this history of sex work, where it's part personal story and it's part history lesson. It's going to be awesome. So thank you folks so much for your time and for listening. We appreciate y'all. We will see you folks next week. Good night.